Capablanca wrote three books. One was My Chess Career, which is about his game. The second, A Primer of Chess, which teaches about chess, and then Chess Fundamentals. Of these three books, I found them in one book. The fourth one, My Chess Career, has not even been translated in algebraic. Is just a kind of Xerox copy of the original in descriptive. But the second, the Primer of Chess and Chess Fundamentals, are in algebraic, so they are easy to read for those that don't know the descriptive. I would like to go to the part where Capablanca shows his games, because I think they are highly instructive, and I will start with a Primer of Chess, the game that he shows as part 3 illustrative games. Obviously, he says part 3 is not for beginners. By the time a student has reached this part of a book, however, he should be a good average player. And a good average player can derive a great deal of benefit from a close study of the ways and methods of the leading players. Okay? So, game number 1 is Dr. Lasker against Capablanca. This is the 10th match of the game. It was played in Havana 1921, and it's a Queen's Gambit decline. D4, D5, C4, E6, Knight C3, Knight F6, Bishop G5, Bishop E7, E3, Castle, Knight F3, Knight B D7, and then there is Queen C2. Here he says the test move is considered inferior to Rook C1. White was probably trying to deviate from better known paths. Okay, so what do you think, if you were black, would be the best move for black to refute white? Eventually try to pause the video, think a little and see. Capablanca played C5. Now, of course, maybe Capablanca wasn't a highly trained theoretician like today, but after all, he was a world champion, so if he played C5, there is a reason. And what is the reason? Here it's clearly fighting from the center, and if he can open that file, he will probably put a rook there, okay? So that's a fact, because white put the queen here. Okay, so rook d1, queen a5, bishop d3, h6. Here it says to remove a pawn from the line of a bishop and thus gain time for development. White was threatening bishop takes h7. Obviously, that was the threat, right? So after h6, white plays bishop h4, c takes d4, e takes d4, d takes c4, and bishop takes c4. Sorry. Knight b6, attacking the bishop. And I think, obviously Capablanca is not writing anything about it, but notice that is still, white still has the king in the center, and this is probably not so good as an idea. Let's see how it continues. Bishop b3, bishop d7, castle. Okay, so both of them have finished the development. Why? Because the rooks are connected. So this is the three tasks of the opening, right? To bring out all the pieces to castle and connect the rooks, and both of them have done that. So this is why we watch games between these top players, because we learn too, right? That's the thing. So after castle, black, like I told you, played rook a c8, because in this way he has a kind of attack on the queen c2. And white played knight e5. Here Capablanca writes, black has obtained an excellent development. He must now find the way either to exchange the white bishop at h4 for his bishop at e7, or to post a piece at d5, so to bring about some exchanges that will simplify the position to some extent. All this must be done while keeping immobile the white pawn at d4. So what is Capablanca teaching us in this game? Is teaching us on how to fight against the isolated queen pawn. This is the isolated queen pawn. Black must control the square in front of the isolated queen pawn, and of course there is, this is a great comment, honestly guys, because Capablanca is really giving you all the guidelines for how to play the position against the isolated queen pawn. Generally the one that doesn't have the IQP, isolated queen pawn, IQP, generally he tries to exchange all the pieces. Why? Because if you remove all the pieces, you have only the two king. This king will go here and stop that. The other king needs to defend it, and then one of the side will overwhelm the other and create a pass pawn that cannot be stopped. So the king generally will go to stop it, and the other king will take this pawn and destroy the other side and win. So, but let's finish to read Capablanca. White's weakness is isolated d pawn. On the other hand, the central position of the pawn at d4 as compared with the less central position of black's pawn at e6 gives white more space and in consequence more freedom of maneuver. Okay, so you have listened to me enough time. I hope that you were thinking, because the point here is this: what do you do if you were black? What would you play now? You need to find the next move. And honestly guys, you can do tactics position from morning to evening. It will not teach you something like this, because this position is kind of quiet. It's kind of a real middle game position, and who is gonna teach you what to play in this kind of position? So you have to think and find out what you want to do here. Notice that I use also another book to teach the pawn structures, so eventually check the videos in the channel. Soon I will make playlists, so maybe it will be easier to find them. So, what did Capablanca play? Capablanca played bishop b5, and he says this is a weak move which might have given black a great deal of trouble. Black wanted to gain time in order to play knight b d5, the pivotal square of the whole position for black. It was the wrong idea, however, as it will be soon seen. The simple and logical move of bishop c6, threatening bishop d5, would have given black an excellent game. So he says the move to play would have been bishop c6, not bishop b5. Okay. Rook f e1, because the bishop was there. Knight b d5. At first glance, black seems to have the better position. Such, however, is not the case. Okay. White could play bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, bishop takes d5, e takes d5, and queen f5, leaving black with a very hard game to defend. So let's see what, if in case you are not able to visualize, let's see, bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6. Obviously, you should ask yourself why not knight takes f6, right? Well, the answer is kind of simple, because white would play knight g6. If you take, it will take with a rook, and then if you move, it's a problem because it takes another piece and gives check at the same time, right? So you cannot play knight takes f6. That's why this is better. Okay, so after which there is, let's see what. Oh, sorry, the knight was here, sorry. So this was the move, after which he plays this, bishop takes d5. And after bishop takes d5 there is this and this, queen f5. And this is very difficult for black to defend, he says. Yeah, now he's attacking this, attacking this. This knight is in a good place, in fact. Yeah, white has a good position of the pieces. Let's go back. Okay guys, I went back because I was still thinking about this or this in relation to the isolated queen pawn, and nothing. It's interesting. I honestly don't know if it's really that bad, like Capablanca says, but I understand the point. The point is that I don't like it in this position, and it's not clear if it takes back more. Okay, in any case, Capablanca played this, rook f1, knight b d5, and now there is bishop takes d5, knight takes d5, bishop takes e7, knight takes e7, queen b3, and bishop c6. Here it says the bishop has to go back to his natural square. This in itself is a condemnation of black's 15 move. Well, sometimes, however, we move the things around just to make the other person go bad, right? So, I don't know. However, here there is knight takes c6, and guess what? Capablanca didn't take, obviously, with the rook or the knight, because this is in pre, right? It's hanging, and so he had to take back. This taking back, however, has an important thing. Now, white has two connected pawns, while these are isolated, yet Capablanca, however, here has control of that square, so the isolated queen pawn is not going to go anywhere. And here it says, after the smoke of the battle has cleared the way, the position is slightly in black's favor. It is true that black has two isolated pawns, but owing to the position of the pieces, the black's pawns are less easily attacked than the one isolated d pawn of white. Rook e5, queen b6, trying, obviously it trades, the pawns are connected again, queen c2, rook f d8, obviously you want to centralize your rook, knight e2, protecting more of this, and then it follows with rook d5, rook takes d5, and now there is c takes d5. So this pawn is permanently blocked, and black has this kind of king side majority. white has a queen side majority. Okay, let's see what Capablanca has to say. Black has consolidated his position, he holds the open file, his pieces are very well placed, and the only weak point is the isolated A pawn, which at the moment cannot be attacked because of the general situation of the pieces. The question is, how can black get the benefit of all of this? From now on, the student will do well to study carefully every move up to the end. It is one of black's best efforts in his whole career, and that against one of the strongest players the world has ever seen. Okay, so from now on, guys, try to pause the video for each of the black moves and see if you can find what Capablanca played. The game continued with queen d2, obviously, because it was attacked by the rook c8. Again, I will ask you, what do you think black played, and you should pause and try to guess, and then I will move on, okay? So what do you think black played? He played knight f5. Here Capablanca says, this keeps two of white's pieces tied up to the defense of a d pawn and prevents rook c1. Okay, because it's attacked one and twice. If you play rook c1, take, and knight takes d4, and you have lost a pawn, right? So now white plays b3. So now you're black. What would you play as black? Notice that at this point it's kind of very important to know where you are with your pieces, what are you doing, and so on. So pause the video and try to find it out. h5. To prevent g4 at any time, thus keeping white from ever dislodging the knight at f5. But obviously white plays h3, right? Because he wants to play g4 and dislodge that. So what do you do as black? He played h3. What will you play? Capablanca played h4. Queen d3. And now what would you play as black? No? Again, you must ask yourself why white played this move. What does he want to do? He probably wants at a certain point to go there. So if that's true, because at a certain point you want to move also your queen, what do you do to prevent queen a6? Well, to prevent queen a6, you have to play rook c6, king f1, and now again there is nothing special, but you need to mark the time. Let's say white move, and so black played g6, queen b1, queen b4, king g1, and now again as black you need to decide what to do, right? a5, queen b2, and now what do you do? a4. And here Capablanca says, by the advance on the queen side, black not only removes his only weakness, the isolated a pawn, but he creates a new weakness in white's game, since white will soon have another isolated pawn beside his d pawn. The next move threatens to win a pawn by rook b6. Okay. So white played queen d2, and the idea is to exchange the queens, hoping thereby to increase his chances of drawing. What do you think black did? Black played queen takes d2, rook takes d2, and now what do you play if you are white? Sorry, if you are black. black played A takes B3. A takes B3, and once more, what do you play as black? Because you see, Capablanca told you this. From this point, you need to try to study black's move, and it maybe wasn't clear enough, but this idea of guessing the move is what you need to do in order to improve your chess. Rook b6. Obviously here, if he plays rook b2, you immediately stop the pawn from gaining space with rook b4, and then you go to attack one of the two. Probably this one will be taken, right? Okay, so rook b6, rook d3. It keeps both of them. Rook a6, g4, and here it says, without queens on the board, the disrupting of the king side is not so dangerous. Besides, white had to give his king some breathing space. Okay, obviously, what do you play? You play en passant. So h takes g3, f takes g3, and what do you play as black? At this point it's kind of clear what you have to do as black, because one of the most important thing is to take control of the 7th or 2nd rank in a game, because generally you start to control a lot of enemy territory and you cut away the king from defending the pieces. It's kind of interesting. So black played rook a2, after which followed knight c3. Obviously you are attacked, you have to remove a rook, but you don't want to give up the 7th rank or the 2nd rank, okay? And so the next move is rook c2. Now the knight has to do something. He plays knight d1, and it says, now the knight comes to the other side to win one of the two isolated pawns. White cannot advance his pawn to b4 because of rook c1 check, and then rook b1. Okay, so knight e7, knight e3, rook c1, king f2, knight c6, knight d1, and rook b1. Here it says that knight b4 is not a good move because it goes to a drawish line. I don't know. Obviously, there is an analysis by Capablanca. Guys, try to eventually look for the book and see with an engine if it's really true that it's a draw, because Capablanca says that if he played knight b4 it would end up in a draw. I don't know if it's true. He played rook b1, and here he says there is no way for white to save his b pawn. White's next move is not therefore a blunder. Okay, so what did he play? King e2. Oh, wow. So what would you do as black here in this position? I hope you study your tactics, because clearly this is a common tactic and is something you should be able to find out in a game. Okay? Rook takes b3. If he takes, there is check, he moves and take. So you lose 2 pawns, right? So he plays king e3. And here Capablanca has to decide in which type of endgame to enter. And he says, I prefer this type of endgame, knight and rook, than just knights left on the board. So rook b4, now there is a lot of different moves, knight c3, knight e7, knight e2, knight f5, king f2, g5, g4, knight d6. As you can see, black is much more active, right? Knight g1, knight e4 check, king f1, rook b1, king g2, rook b2, king f1, rook f2, king e1, rook a2. And here Capablanca says all these moves with a rook have had for object to attain this particular position. So as you can see, he left 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 moves without comments. Why? Because he had a dream position he wanted to achieve. Once he achieved it, he wrote a comment to let you know. Okay? King f1, king g7. And here Capablanca writes, the white pieces are practically tied up as a result of the last few moves. Black can now take his time in arriving with his king at the place where he may want to go. So you, from here, is not only calculating move, but you need to dream the position you would like to achieve, okay? Because if you don't dream that position, you will not be able to understand what you have to do. Okay, rook e3, king g6, rook d3, f6, rook e3, king f7, rook d3, king e7, rook e3, king d6, rook d3, and now there is a check. Rook f2 check. Again, the rook moves have a definite object, and that is to have the same position as before, but with a white rook at e3, so as to facilitate the advance of the pawns. Black could, of course, have won without these moves, but it would have taken longer. Rook e1, sorry, king e1, rook g2, king f1, rook a2, rook e3, and now finally black knows how to win. e5, rook d3, it takes d4. Notice now the guy with isolated pawn is black. Rook takes d4, but king c5. Okay, so it's black, but now the pawn cannot be stopped. And he plays rook d1, d4, rook c1, king d5, and the game is over. This was a 68 moves game, and Capablanca won. But why he won? Because obviously he blocked the pieces from entering the game, and he just has to push this pass pawn and win the game. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you'll see next time.